Hello and welcome to Healing Tips from the Heart, Intuition with Helpers, Healers, and Guides. I am your host, Dr. Lori Hops, licensed psychologist, writer, and artist. I've explored mind, body, and spirit related to intuition, or your personal guidance system, since early childhood. Meet my guests who have learned from their personal and professional lives to explore vast realms of knowing, synchronicities, and overcoming challenges. Their stories may inspire you with tools to enhance your daily living and relationships. Hello, everyone, and welcome my special guest for today, Jennifer Groebe. Jennifer is a licensed clinical social worker, intuitive, and healer. She is semi-retired after a 30-year-plus career in healthcare as a medical, palliative care, and hospice social worker. She's managed many projects, departments, and studies, and she was involved with an really game-changing study called the ACE study, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. She now has work as a provider for continuing education for mental health professionals and case management for clients, especially the elderly or dependent clients. And she volunteers at the Charlotte Maxwell Clinic, which offers free complementary alternative treatment to women with cancer. She offers guided imagery and emotional freedom techniques and has some cool things coming in her life soon that we'll be talking about. So welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure to have you here. And I'd like everyone to know that I've had the really deep honor of working with Jennifer on the ACEP board for several years, and we've been in the same company together at meals and dancing and and professional meetings and so on. So it's just so great. I'm so excited to share your story with a wider audience.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Is there anything else you'd like people to know as we get started today?
About me?
Yeah, about you or anything that's on your mind or your heart right now.
I'm in a very good space, it seems, right now in my life. And I know life has ebbs and flows.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a good time, even though it's a controversial, perhaps, and difficult time in the collective or in our country. So I like focusing on what's good, maybe a few times a day, so I can stay in alignment with bringing in goodness and contributing goodness.
I love it. We need that message. It's easy to get derailed and constricted, yeah, into like hopelessness or fear, anger, that are human emotions and necessary. But if we get stay there too long, then we can't really connect to possibility as easily.
I agree. And then I think this also speaks to a time of great change or out with the old. And it takes a while to be out with the old and welcome the new. And we are, as human creatures, used to the regular, the systems, the sunrises, the sunsets. So anything that kind of disrupts that is disruptive on deeper levels.
Yeah, we're creatures of habit. And I think that there's often a fear of the unknown, like what could possibly go wrong. You know, some people have an adventurous spirit and they're like, bring it on. Let's see what we can create. Like, this is exciting and good, but not everyone has that attitude, neurological reactivity to change, so many things. So thank you for that important message. I appreciate you sharing it. So I know that you've been involved with so many wonderful projects and innovative technologies and different ways of helping humanity. But I did want people to know about the ACE study because maybe not everyone knows what it is and how pivotal it has been in our scientific understanding of mental health and physical and medical. Yeah. And so could you tell a little bit about that, if you don't mind?
I can, and I can't believe how long ago that the study actually occurred. It was back before 1990. I worked at the Division of Research for Kaiser Permanente in Northern California, and that's sort of like an academic setting, lots of good research going on. And at the time, there was a $1 million grant given out to study depression, how to treat depression in primary care, because primary care doctors have their world that they're supposed to listen to your symptoms, try to solve that. But people would come in with depression symptoms and they didn't really know what to do. So an RFP went out across the country. At that time, Kaiser had a presence across the country from coast to coast. And it was in Southern California that a proposal came in looking at morbid obesity, what was the cause of that? And we got a proposal, I'm blanking right now, but it'll come back from the doctor. He applied to Kaiser and to the National Institute for Health. In Kaiser, doctors might have a specific charge, and Vince Folletti is his name, the doctor. And his charge was to try to manage the care of morbidly obese patients. We're talking about people 500 pounds in that range. And so he developed several questionnaires, and we were able to co-fund his project. And as the project administrator, I guess, he was one of my projects, and I had to check in, maybe go visit, get reports, that type of thing. And he came up with a questionnaire that was very, very long, and almost by mishap or mistake, when someone was asking the question, I think it was him, asked a woman about her first sexual experience, and she just broke down and cried and said that it was when she was 11 years old and it was her dad.
Mm.
She hadn't even let that up. So that was kind of an aha moment to restructure the question so more people could answer it. And there were so many questions. I'll just say that ACE stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. So this turned out to be one of the key adverse childhood experiences. But long story short, the study determined there were 10 different things that would indicate problems in adulthood. And of course, with Kaiser, medical problems in adulthood that stemmed from childhood experiences. If I can memorize the 10, there is a chart. You just look up ACE, ACE. But having parents that had a mental illness or some substance abuse, or even probably divorce. None of these things on their own are going to make it so terrible that you can't make it through life, but add on 2, 3, 4 of them on top of one another, that is going to have an effect. And that's what the study found. You might have higher risk of cardiac problems, diabetes, different things like that. Mm-hmm. So that's the long and short of it. But the wonderful thing is it was like a seminal study. It just revealed so much information. I think last year, this time, I was looking up information. I see there's ACEs in Tahiti for people of same sex. I mean, it's just opened up so much. It's an international phrase now, I think, in different languages, ACE. Also, what came out of that was that those 10 items, there's an image of a tree with branches on top and roots in the bottom. So someone may have experienced one or more of the 10 elements of ACE, adverse childhood experiences, but then there are the root causes in society. If there's poverty, if there's housing shortage, we know there's housing shortage now, and those kinds of things. So all together, people have had adverse childhood experiences. I will say too that some years after the study was completed and there were subsequent looking at of the information and the data, that they decided in Northern California, Kaiser decided to ask questions early on about adverse childhood experiences. it didn't really work out because if you're asking a 2 to 5 year old, who's going to answer? The parent. And is the
Mhm.
parent, how forthcoming are they going to be? So that had to be revisited. I'm not sure where it is now. But I've had patients in the hospital when we've had case conference and we decide that person is an ace. They, we look back, we interview them, and we can see how it's affected their health and their mortality beyond just extra weight.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that summary. It really was such a pivotal study. And up until that time, there hadn't been a connection between current health and past experiences beyond like maybe a psychodynamic understanding that, your childhood affects your future. But in terms of research and the fact that there were so many people involved with the study and that the statistics were so clear that I think it's like if you have seven or more, that it really leads you to a really high rate of risk of all kinds of other problems. But the other thing that's so beautiful about it is that it can be used not just as in the back view mirror, what happened, but preventative, looking ahead. And so if you're able to modify things in someone's life, then it's less likely that they're going to have these long-term effects. And also that those long-term effects are not necessarily like set in stone. There are so many things that we can do to change the outcome, even if we've come from seven or even 10 of those, risk factors. And I know that you've devoted your career to helping people with more than just talk therapy to try to help shift that into a wellness space. So, and you're working on some cool things now around that too. So, what would you like people to know about that this isn't like set in stone and that they have the ability to make changes in their life?
Well, I will say, and I will add that what was found was you're right. One thing that is important to remember is that if there's an adult who's reliable, always there for the child, that makes a difference. Now, that can be a grandmother, a neighbor, a teacher, a religious type person, but someone who's trustworthy, an adult who's stable, and that child would have someone to interact with, go to, or just remain stable in their life when their own home may not be so stable. So
Oh,
that's one thing to add. I want people to know that you're right. It's not hopeless, and just like we look back, we learn from what we have gathered, and then we're able to move forward or be together and then move forward together.
yes, thank you for that. Yeah, having at least one person in your court. And it could be a big brother or a big sister or a friend. In my family, we had a couple of family members whose mothers had died when they were quite young, an infant, and then the other at age 3. And having that someone who loves you to be there for you, whether it's a parent or a friend or, kind of like a surrogate influencing
Yes.
force, like it makes all the difference. So that's really, really beautiful. Thank you for that, for mentioning that. Yeah.
So, what am I working on now? Well,
Yeah,
I've always
yeah.
been, I look back on my life, and yes, I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and yes, I've amassed different skills, but I've always been, I think, spiritual and intuitive in a soft way, like not loud and, oh my goodness, what's going on, but just subtle, an idea or a reaction or a response. And I think that's kept me going. I recently had a little bit of experience in family where there was two people felt differently about something and they couldn't quite come together. And I just had to turn that over and say, you will. It's okay right now. That's how you come together, by expressing your differences. And then again, like I said earlier, there is common good. So turn to the common good. When I started becoming involved in energy psychology, I had to kind of get deeply immersed in it as far as understanding it, but it just clicked with me that here's a term, energy psychology, but energy is spirit. Spirit is energy, all works together. And it took me a while to put it together for myself because that's the one thing I've learned with clinicians or practitioners or healers. There's a lot to learn, but you do listen to your own inner self and how it feels good to you. I worked in an elementary school a long time ago, and I became interested in creative visualization. I think at the time the book was by Shakti Gawan, it was her
Yeah.
name. I read it and I loved it. And I tried it with, I have the children you pull out from the regular classroom because they need space or time or extra attention. And we would just relax and breathe. And we would imagine all our problems, putting them into a trash bag and let that trash bag just disappear. And they liked it. They wanted more. They kept asking me for it. So I didn't realize probably I was onto something. I had a skill, and people liked it. I went on to become a social worker, and that took me a little bit more in academics, a little bit more in social advocacy until I returned to healthcare. And again, I think that it's important to acknowledge spirituality in healthcare. We don't necessarily do it. And now there are chaplains to help someone understand what's going on with them and reach out to them on their own path. But I think to me, there's so much power within a person, within their own spirit. And by me helping bring that out by meditation or guided imagery to relax and release things has been good. And I think for several years, if you're familiar with unity type, it's not a denomination, it's non-denominational, but unity is a belief or a following. I did guided imagery. We don't call it, didn't call it guided imagery there. It was more like the healing meditation service. But again, you're getting very, very quiet, and you're allowing spirit to heal you. And then you come back out of it and then you release it. Of course, it involves singing some songs and doing some other things. But I think singing's good because it brings you back, all your body things back together. So I became confident during those years, and that's what led me to what I do now at the Charlotte Maxwell Clinic. And someone will come and talk to me. I want to talk to them for 5 or 10 minutes because I only have one session with them. Find
Ah,
out where they are, what's
mm,
going on. Usually it's about their cancer journey, that they've had a clear scan or that something's going on. And then I'll ask them, is there something in particular that you're concerned about today? And they'll tell me. And then we quiet down and breathe and relax and become more aware of our inner self. And when we're quiet like that, I might do imagery that's about cells and about healing, or I might do an imagery that's just top to bottom, head to toe. Let's just relax all the way. And once we reach that state, sort of together, then I'll use the language that they gave me when we were having our interview. I would say, and so now having more confidence in our abilities, or and this is where I heard you mention some fear, so let's just release that. So it works like that. And then lately I've started to let them be very, very quiet. I leave the room for just 2 minutes so they can have the whole space and have that whole interaction. And then when I come back into the room to close, we talk about it. And some just really, they all like it, to tell you the truth. But they'll say, thank you for reminding me that I have this part of me. I was so focused on the physical illness or the symptoms, and thank you for helping me put it together. And I have been, I guess, lucky enough that I'm there the first Friday of every month. And so some people can request me and that's even more strengthening because I get to see them again and maybe a third time, and I can appreciate their success.
ah, what a treasure. What a treasure that you're opening for them and for you to be able to see that progress and for them to be so open and that whole thing of I forgot. Because so often what we're really doing is just reminding people of their own empowerment, their heart, their soul, their spirit, their essence of life. And it's so natural to get nervous. I'll share this with, if it's okay, just something small. So, I live in Southern California, so I'm really clear that I need to get my skin checked often, just in case of skin cancers. And I had a small basal cell, removed. And so they're like, okay, come every 6 months and we'll check on you. I'm like, all right. So I'm, bopping along. It's been 2 years. And then I came the last time and they're like, this one's changed. The colors changed. Did you notice? And I was telling them a little bit about what I do. They're like, oh, what do you do for a living? So I said, oh, I do energy work. And they're like, you're so calm on the table. Like, what's your secret? And the minute they said, oh, this thing in your skin has changed color, I actually was okay with it because I had an inner sense that it was fine, that I was actually there was some healing going on, that it was transforming itself to leave, but it was not dangerous. But they both got really scared. I could feel them just tense up, and then all of a sudden, like their energy changed, and they got more like clinical, like, well, we'll be sending this into the lab, and blah blah blah, and is it okay? And then they like kind of quietly said like what the, rule out diagnosis for, melanoma, and I just was like, wow, this is so interesting how the energy in the room changed, not because of me, but it would have been so easy to catch it and to
Right.
internalize it in that moment. And then they said something about, oh, this is just, we're scraping the skin, but it is on the, on your on the lower, it was around my ankle. They said, anything that's at the extremity on the feet, like takes longer to heal. And I'm like, well, I'm going to flip that script. So it's so interesting because you do go into a vulnerable state when you're about to hear something about your health. And thank God for me, it was fine. I got the results. It's benign. It was just a mole. It was
That's
changing color.
good.
But it did put that seed of doubt in my mind. I could be wrong, Of course, I could be wrong. So you want to be prepared either way. But it was so interesting to watch the dynamic change. And I'm sure that they certainly didn't mean any harm. If they had been told that they were putting a negative suggestion at a vulnerable point, almost like a hypnotic suggestion of negativity, they would be like kind of shocked, I think, and then would want to do it differently. But I had to kind of like rewrite it inside my own head. And when I go back, I may actually say something because it could be a moment of education. So anyway, thank
I
you
think
for
it
letting
is.
me share that story.
I'm, I'm so glad that you shared it. And I think they don't know. I mean, people spend lots of time, money, energy getting medical degrees and from working in medical care. It's all about this number and this, and that. So they're not going to reveal something personal. Some do sometimes. So I think they would be open. They didn't do anything wrong, but it's so great that you noticed the change that was going on. And that reminds me, one of the women I saw once, I think, at the clinic, so nice. She had a cancer. She told me, she said, I had the breast cancer and I had a talk with my body. And I said, you're here now, but you can't stay.
Oh, the cancer.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Here you are, you made it here, but you can't stay. You're not welcome. And she went through all of her treatments and everything, but her mindset was on healing and pretty much rejecting
Yep.
the things.
So can I ask a question?
Yes.
Since this is your field of expertise. Some people say that it's a matter of accepting the reality as it is. So you don't fight with reality. You don't say, well, I don't have cancer when I do, and then going through the emotions of and the reactions of that's a natural process to let that energy kind of come through you and not fight it. And then some say that you will learn that there's lessons embedded. There's lessons embedded in our challenges and in our pain. And some say that the quicker you learn the lesson, the more likely it is that you can kind of speed up the process and maybe even lessen the intensity. I don't know. Does that land accurately for you
It
or?
lands what I got out of it, or what I felt, was like there's a balance or there's a flow. So as you learn it, or learn the lesson, whatever it is, sometimes the lessons are hard. Letting go of a person, moving somewhere,
Yeah.
admitting something. But as you understand the lesson, I think the illness moves and makes some differences. Now, are there people who seem to need to be ill for some reason? Yes. And we want to help them understand that that reason could be changed to a reason to be healthy, a reason to be well.
Hmm.
So it is a journey, and it is the person's journey. I can help, teams can help. I think in palliative care was really great because we had doctor, nurse, social worker, and chaplain. So everybody could talk in the team about it. This is the doctor or nurse, this is the medical information, but maybe myself or the um, chaplain would say, well, this is how they think and this is how they talk. There's a lot of fear and anxiety, and we might approach it that way. It's more difficult to heal when you have a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety.
Always.
So we just might help with the calming down. And the lesson is for everyone. I might have a lesson to learn by helping the person. Mhm.
Absolutely. I mean, as a patient, I had a lesson to learn being on the table and feeling those shock waves coming through me of the anxiety that was coming from the other side of the room, you know? So, and then to manage that, you know, with all how you're raised and what you believe about illness and health and so on. You mentioned the impact of spirituality. I fully agree that a lot of times this is the root sometimes of how we get off base because of differences in how we connect or not to spirituality, but it's also can be the answer to help unhook us from unhealthful patterns like fear and so on, or old belief structures. And so, is there anything you'd like to share, maybe from your own life or from what you've observed about the variety of ethnic, spiritual, religious backgrounds and how it impacts this wellness journey?
Well, let me try. That's all I can say. I think in some history, in some ethnicities, if you couldn't get the medical care,
Hmm.
maybe you had the spiritual care. In some groups, like let's say in the Latino culture, there's the healer, the cuandera, and people would still go to the doctor if they have insurance, but they're still wanting to get that healing, which is spiritual, which is maybe think this way next week, say these things next week, and of course, try this juice or something like that. So maybe the lack of having access is what kept the spirituality going. And there would be, again, Latino patients who still want to include on their healing team curanderos and healers. There are African American patients who you must include the church, or you must include their religious person, because that's part of their healing team. And that's a good thing. We all as individuals have a chance to put our team together for our own good. Now, certain generations take what doctors say as gospel and don't have a shared decision-making idea that they can say something, that they can participate. After all, it's your body. So who knows better what you're feeling and what's going on? It's your emotional self. Who knows more how afraid you are? You might not release it or share it. So I think um, and many other cultures, Asian cultures, just it's such a diverse culture. So I don't want to say any, broad state, anything
Of
beyond
course.
broad, but the ancientness of that culture, the spirituality, and this, let's just look at, for example, tapping. What are those points we're tapping on? Does that come from ancient Asian, acupuncture and beyond?
Hmm.
So I would always include someone's spirituality as part of social work and medical care. We always had to do the full assessment,
Yeah.
including spiritual, including financial, because those are things that are part of us as a whole that have to be addressed.
Thank you. Great answer. Yeah, of course, the question was not meant to stereotype or group any one answer for one group or
Yeah,
community, but just in general, the importance of this. And if you go back in time, there was no Western colonialized medicine. Everything was the healing in the community from the healer, from the herbs, from the prayer, from the song, from understanding your place in relation to the cosmos or the community or the family dynamic. So the Western medicine is kind of like slapped on like recently, you know? So in the arc of time, it's the new kid on the block. Um,
exactly. I think like you said, if I have a health concern, I sort of remind myself that 150 years ago, if I had this concern, what would be the remedy?
yeah.
Well, of course, if I need an X-ray, I'm going to go. Of course, if I need some information from a blood test, I'm going to get it. But it's also information for me. It's not just information to be, thrown at me and take it for whatever you say. I have to consider it.
Yeah.
And I like to think that in my family growing up, I mean, we had the big medical dictionary encyclopedia to look things up and look things up. But also, I'll just give this example. I had the chicken pox as a child. I'm
Hmm.
that age where I actually had chicken pox, not a vaccine. And what I remember most about it, you have the eruptions on your skin and that type of thing. My mom made she took cheesecloth and put oatmeal in it, and she just bathed me with that. That was more healing than anything, the love and the way she regarded me. So it's a whole picture, it's a whole process.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember the first time that in Chinese medicine, I knew about acupuncture growing up, but I didn't know that they used like heated glass on the skin. And I'm like, oh, it's bunkus,
What is it?
which is a Yiddish term for using the heated glass to pull out the toxins or whatever from the
Yeah, they
skin.
do.
I'm
Mhm.
like, I didn't know they did bunkus. So it's like there's a lot of, and using herbs for healing, whether it's in a tea or something you inhale, like eucalyptus leaves for breathing problems. These things are kind of found throughout the world. We use what's natural, sunlight, water, breath, prayer, medicines of the earth, spiritual medicine, heart connection, and sometimes even prognostication through throwing bones or, prayer or dreams, prophecy. So I'm so excited about where this conversation is going. I didn't expect to bring in such a rich um, global conversation and opening up about the ACEs, but it's so
Well,
cool how that
see,
happened. I love it.
global again, because I just always have to go back to that. We've been living as humans for thousands and thousands of years without Western medicine, but we had something that kept us going. And so using the old and the new together, I think is okay. That's not how the medical system or the payment system or anything like that works, but it is opening up more and more to get alternative medicine from your healthcare provider, whether it's acupuncture, acupressure. Um, I know for some employees, they said recently they had a supportive meeting to help them be stronger, and someone shared cards with them. They would pick a card. And so I think we're getting back to the all inclusive, what works for you, and how can we also assist you?
Yeah. Well, speaking of cards,
Mhm.
I like your segue. Would you like to share your experience with the creation of cards and what cards are? We're not talking about a deck of 52 playing cards.
An idea came to me. What if I wrote a deck of inspirational cards? Do I have messages coming out of me that are inspirational? Yes, I think so. And I contacted a former coworker. We worked in palliative care together, nurse who has a bachelor's degree in graphic arts. So very artistic, very intuitive. And we would keep the staff uplifted, not just the patients, but the staff. Or every time someone died, she made a crane. We had crane, we had art and spirit. So I said, would you like to illustrate cards? And she said, of course, of course. So it came so easily. She did spend time on several different graphic designs, and I had several people look at them. But what we came up with, which seems to be so soothing, is the succulent.
Mm.
And it's just, a succulent is soft when you touch it, and the colors are soothing. We went through the different colors, and I would write the text, and she put it all together. She's much more tech savvy than I am. She's younger. And we had a printing. We printed 50 of them.
Mhm.
And now we're going to have a call tomorrow because it's time to do a second printing because holidays are coming and people are starting to hear about them.
If you could describe, because not all of our audience can see, they're listening to this podcast,
Okay.
so maybe describe the colors or, whatever you want them to understand about these beautiful
The
cards.
succulents are soft little flowers, and the colors here are like a soft magenta, an olive green, a light type of yellow, easy on the eye. And I think if you see it, people have commented, this is just soothing looking at it. And then on the others, so they're all the same on the back with the succulent. And then on the inside, on the other side, there would be a title, a name, a thought, an idea, and then a text about it.
Hmm.
So I will just randomly pick one.
Yeah, let's see what we have for
Embrace.
today.
So I picked embrace. When outer experiences seem loud and overwhelming, I pause with a few slow, deep breaths and have a mindfulness snack. I imagine calming, a calming scene or a soothing song or a happy memory, and I'm able to return to my activities refreshed. That's one
Mm,
example.
I love it. It's
So
beautiful.
we,
It reminds me of you taking the break with the cancer patients and just having that alone time with them where you volunteer.
mhm,
And then you step out for the last few minutes and let them have the space to themselves. And they're like, oh, I forgot, I forgot that I'm more than just this illness or medical challenge or whatever.
it's
So,
true. And then
yeah.
of course, since the cards have been printed, I'm able to bring them and have them choose one at the end to leave with an inspiration. And they might say, this is perfect. This is for today. So it's all alignment. I think it's alignment and me being aligned. The creating of the cards, I will tell you, we started in January and we were finished pretty much in April. And we realized that it came from God because it wouldn't have been that easy. We would struggle and this and that. So it just flowed, and that made us feel good too.
Beautiful. Well, I'll have information in the program notes for how to get a hold of you if people are curious to see what it looks like or to potentially have some cards for themselves. Yeah,
That's great. And that information will be online. So
great.
thank you for sharing it.
Yeah,
Something else came to mind. Um, I think it's important for people to be comfortable in quietness and silence because that's when we hear our inner self. We can be so still and quiet, comes as this gentle idea, a suggestion, something. My grandmother always said that something like that, but we don't hear it with all the noise going on, either in the outer world or a little too much TV or constantly having to be busy, have to do this. If we can just quiet down and be in the moment right here, right now, we'll learn how to do that for longer stretches, longer periods of time, and be more in tune with our real self, our inner self. And the things in the outer world won't be as disturbing, hopefully.
yeah, or you'll have a better sense of how to manage them, even if they are.
Mhm.
Yeah, being able to be resilient even in the face of challenge. Yeah, and I would say that sometimes quieting down then for some people it opens the floodgates and they get overwhelmed because there's so
True.
much that's been like waiting, and it's almost like an overstuffed closet. You open the door and everything comes flying out. And so people are like, I don't want to get quiet because I want to stuff more stuff in the closet, you know? And so it sometimes I guess, well, what would you say would be helpful for someone who has that issue? Yeah.
I would say that find the teachable moment. I have a young adult, or not really younger anymore, my son, and he was I was driving with him somewhere, and he said, "I'll turn the music down," and I said, "Thank you," but the loud music, I didn't know this. The loudness of the music, the beat, calmed him down. Now, how that could calm him down, it made me, but so sometimes I'll say, would you want to get quiet and talk about this? No. So you're right. So when there's a teachable moment, when the person reaches out to you, or you can just leave a card on the table, they might be able to read it. I think so. But that's a very good point that some people don't want the silence because they have a concern about what will be coming out. And you can always address that concern with tapping or I'm afraid, and deal with the fear.
Yeah. And for those who don't know what tapping is, we've kind of mentioned it, but do you have like a summary, a quick summary of what tapping is for people who are like, what is this thing? You keep talking about energy psychology and tapping. What is that?
Well, my summary is my summary, but if we can think of, most people know what acupuncture is. If they've had it, they've heard of it, and that is actually puncturing the skin on certain designated points. If you've also had acupressure, the same points, but now it's a massage, it's a manipulation of that area. So tapping is same point, acupoint stimulation, lighter touch, and it's combined with words. That's why it's very famous and popular with psychology people, because you're doing the old ancient touching with words, giving it words, and that is almost magical. It just opens up and releases certain things. And the best thing about it is you can work with a practitioner or a healer, but you can do it anywhere, anytime, by yourself.
Yeah. So you're bringing to mind the thing that's bothering you, or that you, like, if you're like, I'm afraid to sit and meditate. I want to sit and meditate, but I'm afraid of what might come up. Then there's certain points on the body, on the face and torso and hands that you can tap along with, and following a script or a diagram. And it relaxes the body while at the same time you're introducing something that might be was distressing, you know? And so that creates this like contrast, and in doing so, it opens up a possibility for something new, for your body to learn something new. So I'll have a link to the ACEP website with information on resources for resilience, which are self-help videos and scripts that include tapping and other things for people to do in these states of
That's
distress.
wonderful. I
Yeah.
know that people are more aware of it. More people have at least heard the word.
Yeah.
And I just received, being temporary chair of the humanitarian committee, that is the Resources for Resilience website holder. I just received the statistics for September, and people are looking for more. They've hit the website much more. So it's saying this is a good thing.
That's
People,
wonderful.
it's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, congratulations. And you're doing such a great job with that. Such a really a beautiful piece of outreach to the community that ACEP does. We're a professional organization, but that's our one of our really like central pieces of outreach to internationally, because the videos are without language, so they can be used by anyone without the need to know English. And then the written instructions on many of these are in multiple languages. It's been translated. So yeah,
Many languages, at least 11, and
yeah,
I'm working on another translation. Mhm.
yeah. Oh, really? That's
The
great.
translation, so there's a group of islands, I guess, off of West Africa, Cabo Verde, Cape Verde.
Uh-huh.
It's like 10 islands. And I'm a member of the Medical Society of Cape Verdean American. And I'll be going on a medical mission trip in April. And I've belonged for a number of years and I've missed trips, but I'm on a mental health committee. And so I am now in the business of getting the brochure, the instructions translated into the local language.
And do you know the local language name?
It's Crioulo, so it's like Portuguese. For up until 1970, the country was owned and colonized by Portugal. Independence came in 1975, and so this is like the version of Portuguese spoken by the people of Cape Verde. The reason I was interested in it is because the town I grew up in New England, the people of color were largely Cape Verdean or West Indian and a small amount of American. So that's my culture.
I love it. You're going back to your roots, their ancestral roots. How beautiful. Thank you for sharing all of that. Well, Jennifer, we're coming to the end of our time together today. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we say goodbye?
I'll just share my thanks and appreciation to you, Lori, for coming up with this and doing this. And I'll be anxious to see what it all looks like myself.
Well, thank you for being part of this beautiful library of heart-based knowledge that hopefully in a small way is making our world a better place to be. Yeah. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you, Lori.
Okay. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us for today's podcast. If you want to learn more, you can visit my website for podcast and resources at hopshealingtips.com. You can also like, share, and subscribe to this channel. This podcast is for information and entertainment purposes only and is not providing healthcare advice. Please seek guidance from your professional healthcare team should you need assistance.